"I'm sorry, but we can't simply hand out cash to anyone who walks in," said Jessica Keller, the bank manager. Her voice was laced with a condescension as sharp as the edge of a credit card as she pushed the withdrawal slip back across the counter. "Especially not amounts like this," her tone implied. The words hung in the air of the marble lobby, amplified by the silence of the staff who had formed a small, curious circle. One young woman leaned toward her colleague, whispering just loud enough to be heard, "Yeah, right. She doesn't even look like she has that kind of money." A ripple of stifled laughter passed through the group. At the center of it all stood Angela, the subject of their scorn. She remained perfectly still, her dignity a shield against the mounting humiliation. What these employees didn't know was that their world was about to be irrevocably altered. The woman they deemed unworthy of withdrawing her own money was about to reveal her true identity, and in doing so, change their careers, their lives, and the very foundation of the bank forever. This is a story about the snap judgment we so often pass on others, and the satisfying instant karma that sometimes follows. It began not with a confrontation, but with quiet observation. An elegant black woman stood calmly at the counter, her posture impeccable, her expression composed, a stark contrast to the dismissive and openly mocking faces surrounding her. This was Angela Freeman, the new CEO of Meridian Financial, though no one in this branch recognized her. 25 years before this moment, a much younger Angela Freeman had stood behind a different counter, wearing a pressed uniform and a name tag that read Teller Trainee. Her journey from that entry-level position to the executive suite was nothing short of extraordinary. Angela hadn't been born into wealth or privilege. Her assets were a fierce determination, a brilliant mind, and an unwavering work ethic that propelled her through the ranks. From teller to loan officer, from branch manager to regional director, she mastered every role she undertook. Along the way, she earned an MBA from Harvard, led record-breaking quarters in 3 different divisions, and built a reputation as the one who could turn any struggling branch into a success story. When she was appointed Chief Operations Officer 5 years ago, many assumed she had finally hit the glass ceiling. They were wrong. 3 months ago, Meridian's CEO announced his retirement. The board of directors, despite Angela's impeccable credentials and 2 decades of loyal service, hesitated. In private meetings, their concerns had less to do with her qualifications and more to do with whether major clients would be comfortable with a black woman as the face of the company. After a contentious vote, Angela Freeman became the first black woman to lead Meridian Financial. Her acceptance speech was gracious but pointed. "I will ensure that every client, every employee, and every community we serve experiences the same level of respect and excellence, no exceptions." These were not empty words. Behind the scenes, Angela had been tracking a disturbing pattern in customer complaints. While the overall satisfaction scores looked healthy, a deeper dive into the data revealed significant disparities, certain branches, certain demographics. The numbers told a story the previous leadership had chosen to ignore. Rather than rely on reports, Angela decided to see for herself. The undercover boss approach was not a gimmick. It was the only way to experience the unfiltered reality her customers faced. The flagship branch downtown was managed by Jessica Keller, a 15-year veteran with an impressive record on paper. But Angela had noticed a troubling anomaly in the raw data. While formal complaints were rare, exit interviews revealed that customers of color were leaving in droves, citing poor service and a feeling of being unwelcome. It was 9:15 on a Tuesday morning when Angela Freeman walked through the revolving doors. She had dressed deliberately, a simple navy hoodie, dark slacks, and a baseball cap. She carried a well-maintained but nondescript purse. To any observer, she was just another customer. She took a seat, pretending to check her phone while she observed the dynamics of the room. What she saw in the first 15 minutes was more revealing than 1,000 surveys. A white businessman in an expensive suit was greeted before he even reached the counter and escorted directly to a desk, bypassing the line. An elderly Asian couple was silently pointed toward the ticket machine and told to wait. A young white woman in casual clothes was served in under 2 minutes, the teller chatting amicably about her weekend. Then a Hispanic man in a janitor's uniform stepped up. Suddenly, the teller's demeanor shifted. He was met with a barrage of questions, demands for multiple forms of ID, and a suspicious once-over that delayed his simple transaction for nearly 10 minutes. After watching this pattern repeat itself for 37 minutes, during which 3 white customers who arrived after her were served, Angela finally approached the counter. The teller, a young woman named Beth, had her professional smile fixed in place, but it faltered as Angela approached. "How can I help you?" she asked, her tone noticeably cooler. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please," Angela said, sliding her ID and a slip for $15,000 across the counter. Beth's eyes widened. She glanced from the driver's license to Angela's face, then back again, as if unable to reconcile the two. "This is a large amount," she said, her voice rising just enough to catch the attention of her colleague. "Yes, it is," Angela replied calmly, "but it's well within the daily limit for my account." Beth didn't respond. Instead, she whispered to Mark, the senior teller, who walked over and positioned himself behind her, looming over the counter. "Is there a problem here?" he asked loudly, his question aimed not at his colleague, but directly at Angela. Heads turned. An older woman nearby clutched her purse tighter. Angela felt the weight of their collective judgment, the immediate assumption that she was the one causing trouble. With unshakable composure, she placed her bank card on the counter. "No problem at all. I am simply making a withdrawal." Mark picked up her ID, studying it with exaggerated scrutiny. "We've been seeing some unusual activity on these types of accounts lately," he said, emphasizing the words just enough to make his meaning clear. "We need to be extra careful." "What types of accounts would those be exactly?" Angela asked, her voice steady. Mark ignored her. "Beth, pull up the account history. Let's see the transaction patterns." As Beth typed, another employee, Richard, drifted over. He leaned in and whispered to Mark, not quite quietly enough. "Probably one of those money laundering schemes." He looked Angela up and down, a smirk playing on his lips. "We just need to verify the funds are actually yours," he said with false sweetness. "It's for your protection, you understand." The humiliation was calculated, a public performance for their peers. Yet Angela's dignity remained intact. "I understand the need for security. I have provided my identification and my bank card. I have been a customer of this bank for many years. I would like to complete my transaction now." That's when Richard called for Jessica Keller. The branch manager strode across the lobby, her expression a practiced blend of concern and authority. "Ma'am, I understand there's some confusion about your withdrawal," she said, not bothering to introduce herself. "There is no confusion on my part," Angela replied. "I am trying to access my own money." Jessica's smile was a thin, cold line. "15,000 is a significant amount. May I ask what it's for?" The question, one that hadn't been posed to a single white customer that morning, hung in the air. The double standard was blatant. The tension in the lobby thickened. "Mrs. Freeman?" Jessica said, finally glancing at the ID, holding it by the edges as if it were contaminated. "This amount, it doesn't seem appropriate. This bank prides itself on a certain class of clientele. I'm afraid we can't serve you here." The mask had slipped. It wasn't about security. It was about prejudice, dressed up in corporate language. Behind Jessica, Mark and Richard no longer bothered to hide their amusement. Richard snickered openly. "I'm curious," he chimed in, leaning against the counter. "Did you come into some money recently? A settlement? An inheritance?" The implication was clear. A black woman couldn't possibly have earned this kind of money legitimately. Angela took a deep, steadying breath. "I would like to speak with someone who can actually help me complete my transaction. Someone with the authority to override whatever concerns you seem to have." A flash of anger crossed Jessica's face. "Ma'am, I am the highest authority in this branch. There is no one else." She leaned in, her voice a stage whisper that carried through the silent lobby. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the check-cashing place down the street. They're more accustomed to handling your type of banking needs." The insult was so profound that a few of the eavesdropping customers gasped. Angela glanced up at one of the security cameras, a flicker of knowledge in her eyes that no one noticed. Without another word to Jessica, she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "Excuse me for a moment," she said, stepping slightly away from the counter. As she dialed, Richard nudged Mark, both smirking. "Who's she calling?" he whispered. "Yes, hello?" Angela spoke into the phone, her voice crisp and professional. "This is Angela Freeman calling." Richard mimicked her, puffing out his chest and mouthing the words to Mark, who stifled a laugh. On the wall behind them, the bank's mission statement read, "Building financial success together with trust, respect, and integrity." The words were a cruel irony. Jessica's patience was gone. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You are creating a disturbance." Angela ignored her, continuing her call. "Yes, I'm still at the downtown branch. No, they have refused the transaction. Yes, that's correct." Her calm was unnerving. People in this situation were supposed to get angry or retreat in shame. Angela's composed resistance was a variable they hadn't accounted for. "Ma'am," Jessica's voice rose, "if you don't leave immediately, I will be forced to call security." The large wall clock ticked loudly. It was 10:17 a.m., a time that would soon be recorded on numerous termination documents. As Mark reached for the security phone, Angela spoke her final words into her own. They were quiet, but they landed in the lobby like a thunderclap. "Diane, I need you in the downtown branch, now." The name hit Jessica like a physical blow. Diane, as in Diane Porter, the head of operations for the entire company. A flicker of doubt crossed her face. How could this woman possibly have a direct line to one of the most senior executives in the bank? Her arrogance quickly reasserted itself. It's a bluff, she thought. A desperate attempt to intimidate. She was wrong. Miles away in the executive suite of Meridian Financial headquarters, Diane Porter shot bolt upright at her desk. She recognized that voice instantly. She and Angela had worked together for over a decade, shattering glass ceilings side by side. "Get me every customer complaint from the downtown branch for the past year," she barked at her assistant. "Every single one." She grabbed her tablet and security badge, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor as she raced to the executive elevator. In an adjacent conference room, the board chairman, Jonathan Prescott, stared in horror as the security feed from the downtown branch filled the main screen. "Is that?" a board member stammered. "That's Angela Freeman, that's our CEO." "Yes," the head of security confirmed, his expression grim. "And this has been going on for 17 minutes. They watched in stunned silence as their new CEO was systematically humiliated by her own employees. "Record everything," Prescott ordered, his voice tight with fury. "Every second. And get legal up here, immediately." Back in the lobby, the confidence was draining from Jessica Keller's face, replaced by the first, chilling flicker of fear. She was beginning to realize that something was very, very wrong. High above, the security cameras silently recorded it all. Not just this confrontation, but the entire morning's pattern of discrimination. The system designed to protect the bank from threats was about to expose the poison that had been festering within it all along. Angela Freeman stood perfectly still, her phone back in her purse, watching as the branch manager finally understood that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The observation room, usually a place of quiet surveillance over the bank's many branches, had erupted into a command center. "Pull up every angle we have," Diane Porter commanded, her voice tight with controlled fury. As head of operations, she stood ramrod straight in her tailored navy suit, her usual composure replaced by an intensity that sent her staff scrambling with a frantic, focused energy. "I want audio, facial recognition, timestamps on everything." Fingers danced across keyboards, pulling up a mosaic of camera views from the downtown branch lobby. The screens filled with different perspectives of the same humiliating scene. Angela Freeman, their CEO, being treated like a common criminal in her own institution. "Camera 3 has the clearest audio," reported a young technician, his face pale as the severity of the situation dawned on him. "And we have continuous footage from the moment she entered at 9:15 a.m. In the adjacent boardroom, 3 board members, pulled from a quarterly planning meeting, watched in stunned silence as the feeds flickered to life across the wall-sized screens. They saw it all, the smirks, the eye rolls, the blatant disrespect, the starkly different treatment of customers based solely on appearance. The pattern was undeniable, playing out in real time before their very eyes. "Yes," replied Jonathan Prescott, the board chairman, his expression grim beneath his silver hair. "That's our CEO." The audio feed kicked in, just as a branch manager named Jessica Keller was speaking. "These check cashing places are really better equipped for your needs." Her voice, dripping with condescension, filled the boardroom. This wasn't just bad customer service. This wasn't just rudeness. This was the very rot of systematic discrimination, the kind they had all assured themselves couldn't possibly exist within their institution. "This is happening in our flagship branch," whispered Catherine Reynolds, the third board member. She didn't need to finish the question. The implication hung heavy in the air. How many other customers faced this treatment daily? How many had simply walked away, taking their business elsewhere, never filing a complaint? "Get me everything we have on Jessica Keller," Diane barked at her assistant, grabbing her tablet and security badge. "Employment history, performance reviews, customer complaints, everything. And call legal. Tell them to meet me downstairs in 15 minutes. As she rushed toward the elevator, Diane scrolled through the branch analytics on her tablet. At first glance, the downtown branch's performance metrics were impressive. Top-tier new account generation, strong loan origination, excellent deposit growth. But when she applied filters, disaggregating the data by customer demographics, a sickening picture emerged. The patterns were undeniable, hidden in plain sight. Jessica's branch had the highest account rejection rate for minority applicants, the lowest rate of loan approvals for Black business owners, and a customer attrition rate among people of color that was triple the bank's average. Had they missed this, or had they simply chosen not to look? Back in the branch lobby, tensions were escalating. Jessica had summoned the security guard, a young man named Thomas, who looked deeply uncomfortable. Barely 25 and new to the job, he was clearly unprepared for the moral complexity of what he was being asked to do. "I need this woman escorted from the premises," Jessica instructed, speaking of Angela as if she were an object. Her voice carried the absolute certainty of someone whose authority had never been questioned within those walls. "She's creating a disturbance and refusing to leave." The guard hesitated, his gaze flickering between Jessica, his superior, and Angela, whose composure was a stark contrast to the manager's agitation. "Sir," Angela said calmly to the guard, "I have every right to be here. I am a customer of this bank attempting to access my own funds. I have provided all required identification." Thomas shifted his weight, clearly conflicted. His training had covered robbery protocols, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Ma'am," Jessica's face flushed with anger at the guard's hesitation, "this is a private business, and we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who may be attempting to commit fraud." The accusation hung in the air. Fraud. To those watching, however, the true fraud was becoming increasingly apparent. The fraud of equal service, of fairness, of the very mission the bank claimed to uphold. The staff had formed a literal wall behind Jessica. Mark stood with his arms crossed, his security badge twisted backward. Richard, with a contemptuous smirk, twirled a pen between his fingers. Even Beth, who had seemed uncomfortable earlier, now stood in solidarity with her colleagues, her eyes fixed on the floor. It was all of them against Angela, a unified front of institutional power against a single customer whose only crime was expecting to be treated with dignity. Other customers had taken notice. Some pretended to focus on their transactions, while others watched openly. A middle-aged man who had been waiting in line stepped forward. "Listen, lady, some of us have real banking to do," he said impatiently. "If you're not going to leave, at least stop causing trouble." The irony was painful. Angela thought of the countless meetings where she had championed customer experience, the inclusion initiatives she had funded, all seemingly worthless in the face of biases no corporate memo could eradicate. Rather than argue, Angela quietly raised her phone and continued to record. She documented the staff's expressions, the guard's discomfort, the customer's intervention. Each second of footage was another nail in the coffin of careers built on prejudice. Jessica noticed the recording, and her expression darkened. "Photography is not permitted in the bank. That's another violation of our policies." "Actually," Angela replied, her voice steady, "according to Meridian Financial's own customer service policy, Section 4.3, customers have the right to document any interaction where they feel their rights are being violated." The specificity of her knowledge caught Jessica off guard. Who was this woman? How did she know company policies in such detail? But rather than reassess, Jessica's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she said loudly for everyone to hear. "These people are always trying to game the system, looking for any loophole to exploit." The mask had dropped completely. No more pretense of security protocols, just naked prejudice on full display. Even some of the staff began to shift uncomfortably as Jessica's behavior grew more erratic. Richard darted uncertain glances at his manager. This was going further than he had expected. Beth looked physically ill, her complexion ashen. This public humiliation wasn't what she had signed up for. Only Mark remained steadfast, a physical manifestation of the institutional barriers Angela faced. Through it all, Angela Freeman stood perfectly still, her dignity intact, waiting. The weight of the moment, not just for herself, but for every customer who had ever been dismissed or disrespected, rested on her shoulders. An elevator chimed in the distance. Jessica's head turned, momentarily distracted. The air in the lobby seemed to change, like the pressure drop before a storm. The grand double doors of the branch burst open with such force that they slammed against the marble walls, the sound reverberating like a thunderclap. Every head turned as Diane Porter strode into the space, her presence commanding immediate attention. She moved with the focused intensity of someone about to extinguish a fire. "Stop this immediately!" Her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. It was not a request. It was a command that froze everyone in place. Jessica's expression shifted from irritation to confusion. In 15 years, Diane Porter had visited her branch perhaps 3 times, always with advance notice. Her unexpected appearance, the fury in her stride, triggered the first real flicker of fear in Jessica's eyes. The wall of solidarity behind her crumbled. Richard's smirk vanished. Mark's arms dropped to his sides. Jessica attempted to regain control. "Miss Porter, what an unexpected pleasure. Is there something?" "Do you have any idea who this is?" Diane cut her off, gesturing toward Angela. The question hung in the air. Jessica glanced at Angela, then back at Diane, confusion giving way to dread. Her mind raced. A friend of Diane's? A regulator? Thomas, the security guard, took a deliberate step back from Jessica, instinctively distancing himself from the wrong side of history. Diane approached Angela, her entire demeanor transforming. The righteous anger she had directed at Jessica gave way to profound respect. "I am so deeply sorry you experienced this," she said, her voice carrying throughout the silent lobby. Then she turned back to the staff, her expression hardening once more. "This," she announced, her voice ringing with authority, "is Angela Freeman, the CEO of Meridian Financial, your boss." The words landed like physical blows. Jessica staggered back. Richard's hand flew to his mouth, his eyes wide with horror. Mark's face drained of all color. Beth began to tremble, tears welling in her eyes. 3 months earlier, Jessica Keller had watched a live stream of Angela Freeman on a stage beneath crystal chandeliers, accepting the ceremonial key to Meridian Financial, becoming the first black woman to lead a top 10 national bank. She had applauded politely, and then, apparently, had chosen not to recognize the face of her own CEO. "We've been watching," Diane continued, holding up her tablet. On the screen, security footage played in crystal clear definition. "We've seen how you treated Mrs. Freeman, and we've seen how you treat others." The tablet displayed split-screen comparisons. A white customer making a large withdrawal, processed with smiles. A Hispanic customer's identical request met with suspicion. "Every interaction in this branch is recorded," Diane said, her voice tight with fury. "And what we've witnessed is a pattern of discrimination so blatant it violates not only our policies, but federal banking regulations." She began listing the violations methodically, each one another nail in Jessica's career coffin. "This is a misunderstanding," Jessica stammered. "The protocols—" "Save it," Diane cut her off. "The only protocol you followed consistently was discrimination." Richard stepped forward, pleading, "I was just following Jessica's lead." Mark tried a different approach. "There have been fraudulent schemes, Morsine. We were simply exercising appropriate caution." "We have access to every email you've ever sent," Diane interrupted. "Do not make this worse for yourselves by lying." The main entrance opened again as 3 members of the board of directors entered the lobby, their expressions grave. Jonathan Prescott, Catherine Reynolds, and Dennis Whitehill, the highest authorities in the company besides Angela herself, had come to witness the reckoning. Their presence elevated the event to something unprecedented in the bank's history. The lobby, already silent, somehow became quieter. The most powerful people in the organization formed a semicircle around Angela, a physical manifestation of the support that should have been there all along. Throughout the confrontation, Angela had remained silent, watching not with vindication, but with the clear-eyed assessment of a leader witnessing a systemic failure. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, measured, and carried the unmistakable weight of absolute authority. "Jessica, Richard, Mark," she said, addressing each in turn, making deliberate eye contact. You are terminated, effective immediately. No raised voice, no dramatic gesture, just the simple, incontrovertible exercise of power. Your actions today have demonstrated that you are fundamentally incompatible with the values of this institution, Angela continued. This is not a suspension. This is the end of your employment with Meridian Financial. Jessica's face contorted. You can't just, she began, but Angela raised a hand, and she fell silent. I can, and I have, she said simply. Thomas, she nodded to the security guard, please escort these former employees to collect their personal belongings and then off the premises. Yes, ma'am, Thomas said, straightening with newfound purpose. As the three were led away, the remaining staff watched in stunned silence. There was no celebration, just the solemn witnessing of accountability. Beth, the teller, stood trembling behind her counter, clearly expecting to be next. Angela approached her, and the young woman braced herself. Instead, Angela spoke quietly. The words weren't audible to the lobby, but Beth's expression transformed from terror to cautious relief. She nodded, wiping away tears. Beth would be placed on probation, her visible discomfort with her colleagues' actions having been noted. In the months to come, she would become one of the bank's most vocal internal advocates for equitable service. As Jessica, Richard, and Mark were escorted past the customers, their items packed in cardboard boxes, the full weight of the moment settled over the room. This wasn't just a dramatic firing, it was a public declaration. Angela Freeman stood in the center of the branch that bore her company's name, surrounded by her leadership, in full view of customers who now understood exactly who was at the helm. After the terminated employees were gone, a heavy silence hung in the air. When Angela finally addressed the remaining staff, her voice carried not anger, but resolve. What happened today wasn't just about 3 individuals, she began, gathering the shell-shocked employees. It's about a culture that allowed those choices to seem acceptable, a culture we are going to transform starting right now. The message couldn't have been clearer. Discrimination had no place in Meridian Financial, and those who perpetuated it had no future there. The staff listened in a weighted silence, their attention absolute. Many found they could not meet her gaze, while others offered a slow, reluctant dip of the head, a shamefaced acknowledgement of truths they had long recognized but never dared to confront. Meridian Financial exists to serve every customer with dignity, respect, and fairness. Angela's voice cut through the stillness. These are not simply words on a mission statement. From this moment forward, they are the standard by which every single interaction will be measured. Even as she spoke, the digital wheels of change were already turning. On her tablet, Diane Porter's fingers moved with quiet urgency, initiating emergency protocols rarely used in the bank's history. She transferred management authority, secured access credentials, and established temporary leadership, all before permanent replacements could be found. Every branch, every department, every role in this organization will be evaluated not just on profitability, but on equitable service, Angela continued, her voice unwavering. The metrics we value will reflect the company we are determined to be. At the edge of the stunned group, Beth, the young teller who had started it all, stood trembling. As Angela approached her, tears traced silent paths down the young woman's face. I'm so sorry, Beth whispered, her voice breaking. I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't know what to do when Jessica and the others. Rather than offering a quick dismissal or easy absolution, Angela listened, her focus intent. She recognized this for the crucial moment it was, a genuine opening for change. Learning to stand up against wrongdoing, especially when it comes from those in authority, is one of the hardest things you can do, Angela said softly. But it is also one of the most valuable. What happened next would become the stuff of legend at Meridian Financial, a moment retold in training sessions and leadership seminars for years. Angela Freeman, CEO of one of the nation's largest financial institutions, looked at the tearful young teller and saw not just remorse, but potential. Beth, she said, her voice clear and decisive, effective immediately, you are promoted to interim branch manager. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Beth's eyes widened in shock. But you are someone who knew that what was happening was wrong, even if you didn't yet have the tools or the confidence to stop it. Angela cut in gently. That awareness is the foundation we need. You will have support, training, and resources. But more importantly, you will bring the perspective of someone who has seen firsthand how things can go wrong and who is committed to making them right. 3 days later, the woman who had walked into a branch in modest, unassuming clothes stood transformed. Behind a podium emblazoned with the Meridian Financial logo, Angela faced a sea of journalists, the flash of cameras reflecting in her eyes. The press conference had been arranged in haste but was choreographed to deliver a message of undeniable power. Today, Meridian Financial is announcing our new equitable banking initiative, she stated, her commanding presence a world away from the quiet observer she had been. This comprehensive program represents an investment of $50 million in anti-discrimination training, community outreach, and internal accountability. Board members flanked her on the stage, their unified presence a public demonstration of commitment. What the cameras could not capture, however, was the battle that had been fought behind closed doors. The emergency board meeting had been contentious, with several members balking at the scale of the investment and the public admission of failure it required. It had taken Angela laying out the catastrophic legal and financial risks of inaction, bolstered by the branch's security footage, to bring the last of the holdouts around. Now they stood beside her, outwardly committed to the transformation she demanded. Banking discrimination is not just morally wrong, Angela continued, her words echoing through the hall. It's bad business. When we fail to serve all communities equitably, we leave talent undeveloped, businesses unfunded, and potential unrealized. Her gaze shifted to the front row, where the human cost of their failure sat with quiet dignity. There was Michael Mandel, a successful entrepreneur whose loan application had been denied 3 times despite a flawless business plan. Beside him sat Elena Rodriguez, who had been steered away from premium services she easily qualified for, and James Chen, whose attempt to open a business account was met with hurdles not demanded of other clients. These brave individuals, Angela acknowledged them with a gesture, have agreed to serve on our newly established Client Equity Advisory Board, ensuring that lived experience will inform our policies from this day forward. The press conference made national news, not just for the unprecedented admission of fault, but for the concrete, measurable commitments made to correct it. In the weeks and months that followed, Angela Freeman became the face of corporate accountability in America. Her resolve went far beyond damage control. She oversaw a revolution from within, revising hiring practices, overhauling performance metrics, and launching community investment programs. Branch managers found their bonuses tied to new equity metrics. Customer surveys were analyzed by demographic data to root out disparities, and in every Meridian branch, a new sign appeared beside the teller windows. All customers deserve respect, dignity, and fair service. If your experience does not reflect these values, please call this number. And below it, a single line of text that sent a shockwave through the corporate world, the direct office line of Angela Freeman. 6 months after the incident that reshaped Meridian Financial, Angela once again donned casual clothes and visited a branch unannounced. But this time, she was not hunting for failure. She was looking for proof of a promise being kept, witnessing the change she had willed into existence taking root, one respectful interaction at a time.